What's up, you freaking geniuses? So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to write complex numbers in standard form. And just so you know, standard form is this right here. So it's a plus or minus b times I, where a and b are just numbers, just regular numbers, and I is defined as the square root of -1. All right, so I is an imaginary number, right? Because we obviously can't take the square root of -1. Okay, so in order to write this in standard form, we have to pull out an I from this negative square root. So here, this is going to be equal to 2 plus, and then let's see what we can do with the square root of 25. Negative 25, right? So negative 25, we can split up into 25 times -1, right? Because that's equal to negative 25. Now the next thing that we can do is break these out into their own radicals, their own square roots. So here we're going to say 2 plus the square root of 25 times the square root of -1. All right, so we broke this out into their own radicals, right? So now we can simplify this a little bit more, right? So we can say 2 plus, and the square root of 25, that's easy. That's just equal to 5. And then, like we said, the square root of -1, right? Square root of -1 is equal to simply I, all right? So then here we can rewrite this complex number as 2 plus 5i. All right, here's the next problem we're going to try. So now we have 2 minus the square root of -18, all right? So here, this 2 again is just going to stay as a 2, and we're going to say minus. And then here, the square root of -18, we can once again split up into 18 times -1, all right? So now that we basically took out that -1, now let's break these up into their own radicals. So here we're going to say 2 minus the square root of 18 times the square root of -1. Now here, the square root of 18, we can break that down a little bit, right? So the square root of 18, that's the same thing as, let's say, 9 times 2, right? It's the same thing as 9 times 2. So here we can also split these up into the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. The square root of 9 is equal to 3, so here we get 3 root 2, all right? So then here, finally, we can say 2 minus, and then here we changed it to 3 root 2, right? 3 root 2, and then the square root of -1, again, is just I, all right? So that would be your final answer right there. All right, now we're just going to do a couple more that are going to be a little bit harder. So here we have -6i plus I squared. So you can see that this term is already basically in the same form as we need over here, right? It's just some number times I. So we're going to leave that alone for now. What we're going to deal with mainly right here is this I squared, right? So then here, this is all going to be equal to, let's see, -6i plus, and then remember I, right? I is equal to the square root of -1. So let's just write that down. So the square root of -1, that's what I is. But as you can see, we're squaring it, okay? So we're squaring this whole thing. Now, whenever you square a square root, they cancel each other out. And you're simply left with whatever's inside of the square root, right? Whatever's inside the radical. So in this case, this would be equal to -1, okay? So I squared is equal to simply -1, all right? So we're gonna plug in just a -1 right there. So then here, we can simplify this a little bit more, right? We can say -6i plus -1 is the same thing as just -1, all right? Now we can just flip the position of these two, right? So we can put the number first and then the I term at the end. So here let's put -1 first, and then let's put this -6i right there, all right? So then this would be your final answer. So we just have this negative square root that we have to deal with, all right? So the first thing we want to do, again, is just take out that -1, right? So we're going to say here that this is equal to the square root of 0.04 times -1. Okay, so this is going to be equal to the square root of 0.04 times the square root of -1. Now, can we simplify the square root of 0.04? How do we actually solve for that? Well, it actually might be easier to turn this into a fraction, right? So let's see, this is in the, let's see, this is the tenths, hundredths place, right? So this is 4 hundredths. So 4 hundredths, okay? Now, as you can see, we can reduce this fraction. The top and bottom are both divisible by 4. So on top, we would get 1, and on the bottom, we would get 25, right? So this is the same thing as 1 over 25. So what we're doing here is taking the square root of 1 over 25, all right? I know that probably looks worse, actually, but it's actually a little bit easier. So just like we can split up radicals when we're multiplying, we can also split up radicals when we're dividing. So this is the same thing as the square root of 1 over the square root of 25. All right, so on top, the square root of 1 is simply equal to 1, and the square root of 25 is equal to 5. All right, so that means the square root of 0.04 is equal to 1/5. Okay, or if you wanted to turn that into a decimal, that's the same thing as 0.2, right? And then here, again, we're multiplying times the square root of -1, which again is I. So here we simply get 1/5 I, or we could also write this as I over 5. So if you found the video helpful, make sure to leave a thumbs up down below. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments section below.